Hello and welcome back to the Social Intelligence Tech Demo Day. I'm Dr. Jillian Ney, the founder of the Social Intelligence Lab, and I am thrilled for our first demo session. Now, this demo session is with a company called DTAG. You may never have heard of them before, but let me just give you a tiny little bit of information into them before we get started. So DTAG is a consultant and market research company specializing in big data and social media analytics. So they provide their expertise with organizations and business intelligence to understand their target markets by capturing a snapshot even of how the human mind works at an individual, regional and global level. So they're working micro and macro there. So I want to introduce you to Chubba, and I'm going to nail your surname, Chubba. Dochazi. And I didn't do it. I was nearly there. I'm so sorry. But let me pass everything across to you, Chubba. I am going to turn off my camera and my sound, but I'm still here in the background as you're moving through your presentation and your demo. So please enjoy, everyone. We can accept questions, which we'll get to at the end portion of this 45-minute demo. So please hop them into the Q&A section or in the event chat, and I will, the stage chat. So if you look to your right, and you'll see event and stage and Q&A. If you hop them into the stage chat or into the Q&A, and I'll be able to pick those up at the end. But Chubba, all over to you. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first session of the day. Thank you, Jillian, and everyone at the Social Intelligence Lab for organizing this event, and thank you all for joining this early. My name is Chubba Donchazi, and I'm with DTAG Analytics, and I'm here to talk to you about how details really matter. Digging deeper into social data makes it possible to discover and to measure unknowns and to be able to generate better forecasts. We present a nuanced approach to social media content analytics, enabling precision measurement of customer attitudes and sentiment, which in turn allows for the prediction of future behavior from macroeconomic level all the way down to things as specific as unit sales. This is the slide that I dread the most, and I bring it up only to point out that I've been fortunate enough to work with a pioneering startup that was the second enterprise social listening platform in the market after Crimson Hexagon. After a series of acquisitions, we became part of Kantar, and so I had a chance to work with a really broad selection of companies and sectors before moving to Microsoft, where I was part of a team that built an in-house social analytics system and practice within the customer and market research group. Throughout this whole process, I was driven really by the same question and the same curiosity that kind of determined my course of study at school, which is how to understand people. How do we think? Why do we think the way we do? And why do we do the things that we do? Communication, in my opinion, is a very powerful window to gaining this understanding, and social media in its current form represents a truly evolutionary leap in human communication, and it is still very much growing and evolving as we speak. It both facilitates and shapes opinions and touches practically everything in our lives. We seek to provide the tools to accurately understand the specifics in this endless sea of human voices. And our goal is to help our clients get to know the feelings, the fears, the needs, the perspectives of their customers, wherever they may be. The specific examples I brought today are about peeking into the future by capturing and measuring the attitudes and expressions of people online today. One of the hardest things about social listening is that we're often expected to boil the ocean. It's quite challenging to filter and to focus analysis in a sea of unstructured text. Being able to carry out this focused measurement depends on, among other things, having the right tools to shine a light, so to speak. Before moving on to the specific examples of forecasting trends, I'd like to highlight one of the specific features of our text analytics engine, as it is quite central to the methodology of the case studies that follow. Generally, social listening tools provide sentiment of the documents captured, and many of them do so quite reliably. However, being able to pinpoint and measure the sentiment specifically tied to a particular brand, a product, a concept, a theme is rather tricky, and it's quite resource intensive. But there's a very large difference in the results between viewing the sentiment at the document level versus measuring it at the level of the objects being tracked or discovered in the text. These can be defined or detected objects. They can be query-based topics. They can be detected entities, products, companies, people, or even individual phrases, adjectives, and descriptors. The example that you're seeing on the screen is sports sponsorship. Our task was to ascertain the return on investment for major league-level national sponsors supporting the game, specific teams, or particular championships. Now, while the document sentiments are much more target-rich in the sense that a smaller proportion of the documents are neutral or unrated, they're also a lot less accurate and a lot less differentiated. The sponsors who show up in the conversations and the posts and the articles talking about the game often show up together. And so they're all blended and they're all quite similar to each other in the way that they're treated in sentiment. When you look much more closely and look at just the sentiment towards the particular brand, you get a much more nuanced and reliable picture about how those brands are actually viewed and how the customers and the fans of the game actually perceive them. So a while back, I took on a rather ambitious task. I was asked to create a metric from social media content that would accurately measure the trust and confidence of customers in financial institutions. The time was late 2008, right at the very darkest depth of the great financial crisis, the last one anyway. And banks, insurance companies, investment houses were falling like cards. Our clients in the sector were mortified that if this trend continued, the massive run on banks would ensue and all would be lost. Measuring trust and confidence proved to be actually beyond my abilities. However, I did find a much more primal and strongly expressed feeling, fear, that could, in fact, be defined and captured in social conversations. After a lot of trial and error and educated guesses and a lot of text processing, it became possible to generate a focused slice of content that was not only accurate in the sense of yielding documents that did, in fact, express true fear about losing jobs, being unable to pay a mortgage, recession, or lost investments. The index, which was created, measured the fear of negative financial consequences, and it also accurately predicted the level of consumer spend in the economy 4 to 6 weeks in advance. The chart you're looking at shows the inverse of this fear measurement in the red line, and the amount of money spent into the US economy in any given month in green. While not perfect, the prediction had a correlation above 90% throughout the entire 20-month period with actual consumer behavior. The specific metric that was perhaps even more important to banking clients, the amount of money that people saved and put into the bank or invested, had a similarly high correlation to fear and accurately predicted consumer savings 6 to 8 weeks out. Now, this is sort of the high level. It is not really enough always to look at the big picture. We also need to be able to measure attitudes and to provide guidance regarding specific companies, particular products, both in terms of clients, but also in terms of competition. By accurately measuring the specific consumer sentiment towards a particular product and the products in the competitive ecosystem, it is possible to generate a forecast of actual unit sales, which is approximately 80%-ish accurate 6 to 8 weeks out. What we're looking at here is the weekly unit sales of a leading consumer electronics product in green, while the dotted line represents a forecast metric that is based on the social content talking about this product. And what it's measuring is the share of positive sentiment that this brand was able to secure among social media users talking about the competitive space. We had to deal with a lot of confounding issues, especially in Twitter, but in the end, the forecast range reasonably accurately captured actual consumer behavior, which was very helpful in production planning, in supply chain planning, and not to mention pricing and sales strategy. So a little bit more about ourselves. DTAG is ultimately a tech and service provider. What we're here to do is to ensure maximum value from social analytics for our clients. We offer a customized analytical platform as well as turnkey reporting in with an analyst base that is able to natively speak 17 languages. We think it's very important, as Jillian mentioned earlier, to develop in-house capabilities, to be able to sort of own social analytics rather than outsource it. So a large part of our activities center around training. We provide both online and in-person training courses as part of the DTAG Academy to be able to teach our clients to fish and to develop and build in-house social analytic resources and capabilities. We also have custom solutions and the flexibility to adapt to specific needs, whether that be an existing social platform being used by our customers, piping data into business intelligence solutions that are being used, or to actually engage in custom development to be able to fulfill the project or need at hand. So rather than mincing words, I'd like to share a couple of reasons why you might consider working with us. The first one I've already foreshadowed, which is object level sentiment detection. We believe that this is actually one of the cornerstones of being able to conduct accurate and detailed analytics. And it is something that is, like I said, a bit resource intensive, but definitely necessary. There is a huge difference between measuring sentiment of a document versus measuring the sentiment towards an object. And rather than just having categories of positive, negative, and neutral, being able to put this on a continuum and assign a specific score becomes quite important, especially when trying to generate inputs to predictive models. Another area that gets often overlooked is the fact that different industries, different sectors have different lingo. The language and the conversation and the words and the expressions used, talking about travel, talking about hospitality or the pharmaceutical industry, healthcare, and finance are vastly different. The words used mean different things. The terms and expressions and the sentiments expressed are all at different levels. And there is no such thing as a true one-size-fits-all solution. So what we've done in collaboration with our partners is to develop customized sector-specific language packs, which are able to both save the work of creating definitions for, let's say, all the competitors in the space or all the airlines or all the sports teams that are in the market now, but more importantly, a standardized and nuanced way of dealing with language that is appropriate for the sector, for the particular industry in question. Which brings us to the importance of being able to customize. Text processing is a central part of social listening. We essentially all work with massive amounts of text that would be impossible to read with human eyes. That's why the machine does it. And one of the things that the machine does well is to generate reliable and consistent results across thousands and millions of documents. However, being able to tune this, being able to customize this is quite important. We're very much strong believers in transparency. And we offer what we believe to be the most highly configurable system in terms of natural language processing to our clients that is both highly customizable to the specific needs of the use case and the project in question, but also fully transparent such that we are able to justify and understand and explain the results that we get. There is no black box. There is no relying on a magic solution because all of the levers, all of the trappings of how natural language processing is done are explainable as well as configurable in the system. The other aspect of NLP is that it's quite difficult to get accurate results in the non-quote-unquote traditional languages. Doing natural language processing in English has been done for a long time. There are a lot of use cases. There's a lot of resources and experience behind it. But it's a little bit more difficult as you drift further away. So we're able to do not only English and major European languages, but in total 31 different languages at the same level of consistency, at the same level of accuracy, and with the same amount of features and object detection across each of them. Jillian also mentioned this at the beginning. Social analytics is still very much, in some ways, an uncharted territory, but in any case requires expertise. So we're extremely proud of the network of global analysts that we've been able to bring together, who are able to work with native language understanding in over 17 languages. And the customization of natural language processing settings, the localization of definitions, and ongoing support for multi-market projects is something that we're able to undertake for our clients. And last but not least, it's something that I think often gets overlooked as we choose social analytic tools. There are a tremendous amount of really good platforms out there. I've worked with almost all of them, not all of them, but close. What we have sought to build is a highly adaptive system that can be customized, but also can be added to existing frameworks. And so our approach is that we are not expecting that that a social listening tool or a framework or a solution be swapped out for ours, but rather that we're able to augment and that we're able to go the last mile, so to speak, and extract the extra 5, 10, 20, 30% of value from the content that is already available, or to be able to add an analytic capability in languages where such is not available out of the box. So with that, I would like to switch to a short demo and share a couple of the details of the platform. If you'll bear with me for a second. Okay. At this point, I would usually ask you if you can see my screen, but you can't answer, so I'll assume that you can. So, as with any social listening engagement or any system setup, one starts with a query. The query is ultimately what defines the universe of content that comes in. And so what we've done is try to create for you a way of making it as flexible and configurable as possible. This is something that generally we would do on behalf of our clients. Getting data from Facebook and Instagram is tricky. We'll hear more about that later today or tomorrow. We have access to a data stream of our own where we can define the query ourselves, or we can work with existing outside or third-party social platforms and connect to it with a pre-built query using client data and client settings and client permissions. And once the queries are built, they basically form collections. I can combine one or more queries and build a new collection from scratch, or I can upload data that already exists outside the system. This is quite useful for applications where, for example, firewall content is needed, and I cannot sort of get public access to it from data aggregators, or for content like verbatim responses to a survey, or, for example, customer service feedback or transcripts. These can all be processed in the system. Once the collection is built, I'm now able to go on to create a dashboard. The dashboard is ultimately a viewing window that provides us access in a graphical way to the data that's being processed in the background. So what I've done is put together a short and reasonably small data set that looks at a couple of days of activity in the cryptocurrency space. As I'm sure many of you are aware, it's quite a lively conversation. Reddit specifically was, let's say, the locus of interest. In this particular set, I've actually explicitly excluded Reddit for the very simple reason that the volume would have been overwhelming to process. And so what we're looking at here is the meta conversation. It's the conversation about the phenomena that was happening around Bitcoin and various other cryptocurrencies during this time period. Our intent was to try to cater to the needs of the analyst. This is intended to be a tool that is most useful to those that are familiar with the space, that are familiar with the data, and actually want to dive into the details. At this point, this is actually quite a simple chart looking at the data at an hourly breakdown for a couple of days in March. You can also change it from minute to month, depending on the time frame and the document volume that you're looking at. Reach is, of course, a metric that may or may not be relevant in the case of following, for example, Twitter and Instagram accounts. Obviously, it has a huge significance. You want to know how many people are reading the posts, are affected by or influenced by the sentiments and the opinions being mentioned. So that is something that we can obviously track over time. One thing that I'm rather proud of is the ability to actually explore. It's one thing to have a sort of preconfigured and predefined set of things that you're looking for, but exploring a piece of data, going into an uncharted block of documents and trying to figure out what it is that you should be looking for is quite challenging. And so we've tried to create a visualization that allows you to do just that. And the way this works is that there's three major data types that you can choose from. Entities are ultimately nouns, for lack of a better descriptor. These are people, places, products. They can be companies, and they can either be detected automatically by the system based on pattern recognition, or they can be custom defined. So if you want, for example, every possible mention of Bitcoin to be accurately tagged and aggregated into a single metric, you can create a custom definition using keywords that are related to it. Themes are ultimately noun phrases. They're detected automatically by the natural language processing engine, and they generally represent these expressions that you're looking at in the outside wheel here. Commanding multiples, Ethereum blockchain. They're 2 or 3 word sentence fragments and combinations that allow us to peek into what is the topic of conversation, what is actually driving this conversation. And then topics are generally custom defined. These would be concepts. So I've been asked to create a lot of different topics in my time. Some of them are quite straightforward. Security or price or value might be examples of topics. The ones that you're looking at right now in terms of business or software and internet or technology are the really broad generic buckets. There's about 40 of them that are predefined in the system, but they can be quite complex and quite esoteric. So one of the more interesting topics that I've had to create were let's say the motto or the driving principles of Microsoft, for example. I would be curious to hear some ideas about how those can be defined. But anyway, we can determine which one we want to see in the middle, and we can focus just on companies, for example, and modify the exploration to suit what is found. So in this case, Tesla, Facebook, and Visa would be some of the bigger companies that are mentioned, and the topics and the various concepts that show up around them can be explored. And you can add additional levels if you want to increase the complexity. This is an example of the same sort of concept that I demonstrated earlier, which is that the total sentiment that is focused on the entity, focused on the actual product or company in question, is quite a bit different. The neutral is going to be much larger because it is much more rare that a specific sentiment is expressed towards an actual concrete product or company. The document itself is always going to have a lot more positive and negative because it is much less specific. And of course, the ever popular word cloud. I'm not actually that fond of word clouds per se, but nevertheless, they are an additional exploratory tool that allows you to quickly glance at and look at sort of the top concepts that are showing up. In this particular case, I'm showing you the difference between the conversation pieces that show up around Bitcoin and the distinction between the currency and the technology of blockchain. As I mentioned, the goal here was flexibility. So you're able to create a number of different widgets. You're able to create the visualization that you want to see. And at the end of the day, the type of chart that is created is sometimes dictated by the data that's being shown, but is quite flexible. And so it should be suited to the needs of whatever you want to take a look at. In terms of the tagging, what you're seeing here is the various different types of things that are detected by the engine are highlighted in the text. So you actually have the specific example before you if you want to verify, if you want to dig into the text itself. And then last but not least, all of this is going to be exportable either as an image or as data in the format that is best suited for your needs. And then coming back to a couple of the other options here, we do have a number of automated reports that can be generated as long as the collection exists and the data stream is already established. We're able to create an automated report with a variety of different frequencies. We have a couple of templates which we can either offer out of the box or customize as needed. And ultimately, this is something that gets sent to the recipient that is defined. The last piece that I wanted to take you through is alerting. This is something that does sometimes get people into trouble. The specific problem is almost always the large number of false alerts or false positives. So we've tried to minimize this by giving the user as many options as possible in terms of defining what exactly the thresholds and the triggers should be. So we can work with either average number or total amount of either mentions or sentiment scores focused around the types of things that can be detected using the NLP, either entities, themes, or topics, drops or increases, whether they be spikes or declines, either in absolute terms or percentage terms across either hours or months, depending on the use case. Each of these can be individually configured, saved, and then ultimately the notification will be sent to the email account specified. We're also working on building out further capabilities, such as video processing and audio processing. At the moment, we are able to convert voice to text or use audio files and basically treat them as textual documents and display them in much the same way as we do the social content and text-based documents that we're working with usually. And at the end of the day, all of this is either configured by us or configurable by the client. We do provide the support and the training to be able to set this up. As I said in the beginning, our goal is to give as many tools and as much detail to the customer as possible, because I firmly believe that there are no good one-size-fits-all solutions. And it's quite important to be able to customize and to be able to tailor both the visualization as well as the underlying processing to the needs of the client and the project in question. So I believe I fit into my allotted time, and I thank you very much for listening. And I'm going to hand back the words to Jillian.
Hi, thank you very much for that. So there's a lot going on there, and Juan, I see he's been prolific in the chat as well. So he's been giving some extra context around what you've been talking about, Chubba. So that is good to hear. I am looking for questions. Let's see here. Please, so on the right-hand side here, there is event chat and then there's stage chat. If you can click on stage and then go into chat, and then there's chat and Q&A. So please get your questions ready for Chubba to talk about DTAG. It's likely that you've never heard of them before, or prove me wrong and tell me that you have and you're a customer. That would be awesome too. But so I've got some questions. I've got some questions here from what you were talking about, which is quite fascinating. So the first one that I really picked up on, because this is something that we're getting asked about a lot, is audio and video analysis. So how far off are you from that, Chubba?
Always. In terms of audio analysis, that is the easier task, right? Anything that is sort of spoken word, whether it's written or uttered, can be treated much the same way. The accuracy of the transcription, the accuracy of the conversion to text is often the big sort of question here. We've had reasonably good results. We've tested a couple of technologies, and we think we have something that's quite highly accurate. It's also the same as with any kind of NLP technology. The language is a big differentiator. So it's one thing to be able to convert English text to, English speech to text, and quite another to do so with a sort of less commonly used or less well developed in technology terms languages. In terms of video, it is quite a big challenge, and to be quite frank, there's quite a bit of internal debate as to which direction to go in. My short answer is we would like to make a considered decision. Basically, we cannot be the best at everything, and it has to add substantial and tangible value to our customers. And so we're right now still exploring the space. The solutions that I've seen thus far are not necessarily as, how shall I phrase it, impressive as I would like. And if we're going to do something in this space, I would really want to do something more. I just don't have a very firm answer as to what that might look like. It's also a thing that, I'm sorry about the really long answer. At the beginning of my career,
and I have to say that I love your attitude. We don't want to make it just because we can. We want to make it so it's useful. I love that, and I think that that's the perfect answer. But yeah, please feel free to finish off what you're saying.
No, I get. Look, it's hopefully short, but it's basically it's just too expensive to do at scale, to do it in bulk. At the very beginning of when we started out working on something like this. I don't even want to say when. One of the big drawbacks to trying to build a social listening platform was the databases were simply not able to hold the scale of documents that were required. You couldn't build at the time a MySQL database that had 5 million records because you simply couldn't fit it on a single machine that had sufficient processing power and memory capacity. Obviously, that has changed. We now have distributed computing, and we now have cloud computing. We have a lot more flexible algorithms and search and database structures than we had 20 years ago. And I suspect the same thing will happen with video processing, and will happen much faster than it took the database technology to advance to the level that it is now. But as of right now, it's simply not feasible to do at scale the depth of analysis that would be needed. And I believe it's something that will be pushed back on, and actually is already being done by the video platform providers such as YouTube and Vimeo, who are now essentially beginning to provide this kind of data on the uploaded content. It seems to me that actually makes a lot more sense to learn how to leverage the TikTok. Okay, almost forgot about that, right? So it makes a lot more sense to leverage the innate expertise of the platforms that already have the technology and already dedicated to this type of processing.
So, no, thank you very much for that. Like I say, it's something that we get asked about a lot just now. So it is good that, it's good that you've been thinking here, and there's some challenges and there's some progress in other areas. I guess probably what we need to do here at the Social Intelligence Lab is to get some kind of working group together to start to explore some more of this and what's coming and what's possible, which can then help everybody in the long run. So I'm going to mark that down. My team is on here, so please mark that down as a to-do for me, please. So while you've been talking there, Shaba, we've got some questions that have come in. So the first one is from Dudley. Dudley, thank you for joining us. Can you give us some color on how your sentiment analysis works? He's asking.
I'll do my best. So I talked quite a bit about the importance of object level sentiment. So I mean, this is hopefully this is accurate, but the way that natural language processing software attempts to understand and process the text is to try to emulate the way that a human mind would understand it. So it blows up the text, breaks it into paragraphs and sentences and parts of speech, identifies the individual words, and sort of creates a map of what's in it. And the way that we approach sentiment analysis is to first identify the things that might be interesting. So these would be the entities that are extracted, right? These should work in most natural language processing softwares, but we mark where they are in the text, create sort of lexical chaining. So, for example, if somebody says President Bill Clinton was the great president during the 90s. He also had quite a few issues, both political and personal, during his term. And he is from Arkansas, right? So the term he, the pronoun is tied back to the original subject. And so all of the subsequent sentences where these are used are also collected. And so the point is, anything that's in any of those expressions, whether it's good or bad, is enumerated, is scored, and depending on the distance from the object, distance from, in this case, President Clinton, depending on negators and amplifiers. So he was not a bad president, or he was a very gregarious gentleman. All of these things will modify the score. And these numbers ultimately are what are retained. And so what you get is a couple of things. How many mentions of the person were uttered? What were the actual phrases used? So gregarious, good, bad, I don't know, let's say white-haired, right? All of these descriptors are also recorded, and the sum is calculated at the end. This is also done at the document level. So everything that's in the document is collected, but you also have the specific locations and the particular scores for each of the individual objects in it. That's as detailed as I can get.
Brilliant. No, that is perfect. Dudley, the expo will be opening at 10:15, so 10:15 BST UK time. Feel free to hop in And Kasba and his colleague, his co-founder Juan, will be in the booth, and you can ask some more questions at that point. Ishak, we've got another question. Everybody's so concentrating on sentiment, it's killing me. This is so important for some people. So a quick question here. I've used a decent number of ORM and social listening tools to date. Yep. I just want to understand what kind of sentiment accuracy does DTAG provide. So we're still on the sentiment. What's your accuracy on sentiment, Kaba even?
Okay, well, this is a challenging question.
Yeah.
The kind of rote response is that we cannot get better at sentiment accuracy than the agreement between human raters. So if you sit 5 people down around a table and you hand them the exact same document and you tell them score this on a scale of 1 to 10, the agreement between the 5 humans is going to be somewhere between 60 to 70%. Depending on the topic, it could be better or worse. So the performance of a machine is going to be highly subjective. So what we actually put out as a target is to get to at least 75-ish%. And the way we do that is by manual intervention. So essentially, there will have to be a series of rounds of human raters going through the specific topic that is being examined. This also ties back to the sector-specific language packs. This is what was done on, for example, hospitality, travel, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, because the specific language that is used there is going to be different from technology and retail, for example. So what we do is to intervene and to actually add these amplifiers, these negators, these adjectives, these phrases to the dictionary. Another method which is also available is to essentially do machine learning, feed it a sequence of already coded documents, which we know to be positive or negative. The challenge here, of course, is that it goes against the entire concept that I was trying to explain earlier, which is that we need the sentiment to be accurate at the object level, not just the document level. So these are the things that we can do to improve accuracy. Generally speaking, it's between 70 and 80%. That's what I would call acceptable and quite quite good. You can occasionally get higher than that, but it's kind of a fluke.
No, you've been great, because I like to hear the truth, because a lot of people will just tell me that it's like 90% accurate and all that stuff, and we know that it's not. So thank you for your detailed explanation. Ishak is also saying, Brian, I thank you for Brian Wright, who's one of our certification students. He's your neck of the woods, Chubba. He's in the US, so he's up extraordinarily early to join us today. So good morning, Brian. I've not forgotten about you. I do see your question, but I just want to answer this follow-on one for 1 second. Ishak is saying also, I've created a good amount of data across brands in my experience. I was wondering if there's a way to include that data into the tool and probably help the process for a same or better analysis. So can you upload into DTAG as well from what you've already collected?
It depends on what was actually collected, but the short answer is yes, right? So the way that a natural language processing engine is built is it's built from various modules, and one or actually multiple of these modules comes from corpuses, comes from large blocks of text that have been evaluated and marked up by humans. So
sorry to interrupt you here. So we're about to hit our time here, and things will start to kind of stop broadcasting. So Ishak, please hop on to the expo and you can get in touch with DTAG and they can go through some of that, and then you can explain what data you've got. Quick fire round for you here, Chubba. Are you able to go beyond sentiment, for example, emotions and depth of feeling?
Yes and no. So we can arbitrarily create a really infinite number of definitions, but the depth of feeling is expressed numerically as a score, and by the number of adjectives and modifiers that go into creating that score. So I can give you a mathematical answer, but it's not it's not yet, or rather, I would have to fit into a framework to be able to give you an answer.
Okay, so Brian, if you can again hop in at 10:15 my BST UK time, which I'm trying to calculate in my head what that is in EST, and I'm just completely failing. And you can speak to Chaba and Juan about this. There is one last question that's coming in here. Sunil, we've got your question here. And again, if you need a follow-on, you can speak to the guys in the booth when the booth's open at 10:15 BST. So very quick question. Does the platform cover Indian regional languages?
Alas, not really. No. So we do have 31 distinct languages that are available, but we do not yet have enough coverage in Indian dialects or regional languages. The good news is that we have both the partners and the capability to develop additional language packs that work in much the same way. This is something that takes time and resource, but at the moment, our coverage in that specific language group is not complete yet.
Okay, no worries. So I guess you need a partner to help you be able to spend the time and to create some of this if it's going to take time and money, I guess, as well.
We built 5 packs over the course of the last 2 years, and so we're absolutely open to it. It's kind of we can't afford to take the "if you build it, they will come" approach.
So you need a partner. So Sunil, if you want to speak about partnership, go into the expo when it opens at 10:15 BST, and Chaba and Juan will be more than happy to chat to you about that. So Chaba, thank you so much for this today. You've been fantastic, and you had everything spot on time. So thank you very much. If you're looking for more information on DTAG, then you can jump into the expo and get in touch with Chaba and his co-founder Juan, and they'll be more than happy to take any of your questions. Look out for them more on the Social Intelligence Lab site in general too. We're bringing you some great things coming across the rest of 2021 together. So thank you very much for your time this morning, Chaba, and I will see you later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Jillian.